Comfort feels like peace, but it's often a trap. The illusion of safety is one of the most seductive forces in human psychology. It whispers that if you stay where you are, you'll be okay. But growth never happens in safety. It happens in tension, in discomfort, in risk. Carl Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And comfort is the perfect hiding place. It numbs the pain, delays the truth, and disguises stagnation as stability. The brain, wired for survival, seeks predictability. It prefers the known over the unknown, even if the known is toxic. That's why people stay in broken relationships, dead-end jobs, and self-destructive habits, not because they're happy, but because they're familiar. Familiarity breeds inertia, and inertia kills evolution. The comfort zone is not a sanctuary, it's a slow death. It's where dreams decay, potential rots, and identity freezes. Nietzsche warned that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how, but without a why, comfort becomes the default. You stop asking questions. You stop taking risks. You stop growing. And the worst part, you don't even notice. Because comfort is quiet. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It tells you to wait, to rest, to postpone your transformation until tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes. The only way out is through discomfort, through uncertainty, through pain. Pain is not the enemy. It's the signal. It tells you where the growth lives. It points to the wound that needs healing, the fear that needs facing, the truth that needs speaking. To escape the prison of comfort, you must first see it. You must recognize the patterns that keep you small, the stories that keep you stuck, the habits that keep you numb. And then you must act. Not with motivation, but with courage. Courage to disrupt the routine, to challenge the familiar, to walk into the unknown. Because the unknown is where you meet your future self, the one who's stronger, wiser, freer. The illusion of safety will try to pull you back. It will offer excuses, distractions, and false promises. But you must resist. You must choose growth over ease, truth over comfort, evolution over stagnation. That choice, repeated, becomes transformation. And transformation begins the moment you stop seeking safety and start seeking strength. Pain is not the enemy, it's the messenger. It arrives uninvited, often unwelcome, but always with a purpose. In the body, pain signals injury. In the mind, it signals misalignment. And in the soul, it signals growth. We've been conditioned to avoid pain at all costs, to numb it, suppress it, escape it. But pain is information. It tells you what's broken, what's buried, what's begging to be healed. The problem isn't pain itself, it's our refusal to listen. Neuroscience shows that pain activates the same brain regions as emotional rejection, failure, and shame. That's why heartbreak feels physical and why fear can paralyze. But pain also activates neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change. When you lean into discomfort, your brain rewires. It adapts. It evolves. Pain is the catalyst. It forces reflection, demands honesty, and invites transformation. Carl Jung said, there's no coming to consciousness without pain. Because pain strips away illusion. It reveals the truth beneath the mask. It shows you what matters, what's missing, what must change. And that truth is often uncomfortable. But discomfort is the birthplace of growth. Every breakthrough begins with a breakdown. Every evolution begins with a rupture. Pain is the crack in the shell, the opening through which light enters. But only if you're willing to feel it, to sit with it, to learn from it. Most people run. They distract themselves with pleasure, with noise, with busyness. But running from pain only deepens it. It festers. It multiplies. It becomes chronic. The only way out is through. Through the tears, the tension, the truth. Pain is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the body's way of saying, pay attention. It's the mind's way of saying something's off. It's the soul's way of saying, you're ready. Ready to grow, to heal, to evolve. So stop numbing. Start listening. Ask your pain what it's trying to teach you. What boundary was crossed? What value was ignored? What truth was denied? Pain is a compass. It points to the wound. And the wound is where the work begins. Not to erase the pain, but to understand it. To integrate it. To transform it. Because when you do, pain becomes power. It becomes fuel. It becomes clarity. And clarity leads to change. So the next time pain knocks, don't slam the door. Open it. Invite it in. Let it speak. Because behind its voice is the map to your next evolution. Resistance isn't laziness, it's biology. Your brain is wired to protect you, not to evolve you. Change is perceived as a threat, and the moment you try to break a pattern, your nervous system reacts with fear, fatigue, and doubt. This isn't weakness, it's survival. The amygdala, your brain's fear center, lights up when faced with uncertainty. It floods your body with stress hormones, urging you to retreat, to stay safe, to avoid risk. But safety is not growth. Evolution demands discomfort. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic, planning, and long-term vision, must override the primitive impulse to avoid pain. And that override takes energy. That's why change feels exhausting. It's not just emotional, it's metabolic. Your brain burns more glucose when solving new problems than when repeating old ones. That's why habits feel easy and transformation feels hard. But hard doesn't mean impossible. Neuroplasticity proves that the brain can rewire itself, but only through repetition, intention, and struggle. Resistance is the signal that you're entering unfamiliar territory. It's the friction between who you are and who you're becoming. And that friction is sacred. It means you're alive. It means you're growing. The key is not to eliminate resistance, but to understand it, to expect it, to work with it. Like a muscle, the brain strengthens through stress. Every time you push through resistance, whether it's waking up early, speaking your truth, or breaking a toxic pattern, you're training your mind to adapt. And adaptation is transformation. But most people interpret resistance as failure. They feel discomfort and assume they're doing something wrong. So they quit. They retreat. They return to comfort. But comfort is not neutral, it's regressive. It reinforces the old wiring, the old identity, the old limitations. To evolve, you must embrace resistance as part of the process. You must see it not as a wall, but as a threshold between the known and the possible. And crossing that threshold requires courage, consistency, and compassion. Compassion for yourself when you stumble. Consistency in your effort. Courage to keep going. Because the biology of resistance is not a curse, it's a challenge. A challenge to rise above instinct, to choose growth over fear, to become the architect of your own evolution. And when you do, the resistance fades. Not because it disappears, but because you've changed. You've become someone who no longer fears the unknown, but seeks it. There's a part of you you've buried, the part that holds your rage, your shame, your fear, your unmet desires. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the unconscious self that contains everything you've denied, rejected, or disowned. Most people spend their lives running from it, projecting it onto others, pretending it doesn't exist. But what you ignore controls you. The shadow doesn't disappear, it waits. It leaks into your relationships, your habits, your decisions. It sabotages your growth, distorts your perception, and keeps you trapped in cycles of self-destruction. Shadow work is the process of turning inward, of facing the darkness with honesty and compassion. It's not about fixing yourself, it's about integrating the parts you've abandoned. The anger you suppress becomes depression. The fear you deny becomes anxiety. The shame you hide becomes self-sabotage. But when you face these emotions, when you name them, feel them, and understand them, they lose their power. You reclaim your energy. You reclaim your wholeness. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Shadow work is how you break that fate. It's how you stop repeating patterns and start rewriting your story. It's uncomfortable, messy, and often painful. But pain is the portal. When you enter it willingly, you find the truth. You find the root of your triggers, the origin of your wounds, the source of your resistance. And in that truth, you find freedom. Because the shadow is not evil, it's misunderstood. It contains your creativity, your power, your authenticity. The parts of you that were shamed, silenced, or punished in childhood are still alive, still waiting to be seen. When you embrace them, you become whole. You stop performing and start living. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop fearing yourself and start trusting yourself. Shadow work is not a one-time event, it's a lifelong practice. It's the daily decision to look inward, to ask hard questions, to sit with uncomfortable answers. And every time you do, you grow. You evolve. You become more conscious, more compassionate, more powerful. The shadow is not your enemy, it's your teacher. And when you learn from it, you don't just change your life, you change your legacy. Transformation is not a gentle process, it's violent, raw, and sacred. The rebirth ritual begins with destruction. The old self must die. The illusions, the identities, the masks, they must be shattered. And that shattering feels like chaos. You lose your bearings. You question everything. You feel broken. But brokenness is not the end, it's the beginning. In mythology, the hero must descend into the underworld before rising. In psychology, the ego must collapse before integration. In biology, cells must rupture before regeneration. Rebirth is not a metaphor, it's a pattern. A universal cycle of death and renewal. And you are in it. When life falls apart, when pain becomes unbearable, when nothing makes sense, that's the initiation. That's the moment the old story ends. But most people resist it. They cling to the ruins, trying to rebuild what was never meant to last. But healing doesn't come from reconstruction, it comes from reinvention. You must let go. Let go of who you thought you were. Let go of the roles you played, the beliefs you inherited, the expectations you carried. Let them burn. Let them dissolve. And in that emptiness, something new begins. A whisper. A spark. A vision. The new self is fragile at first, uncertain, unformed. But it's real. It's yours. And it's built not on perfection, but on truth. The truth of your pain, your resilience, your awakening. Rebirth is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you've always been beneath the conditioning. It's about remembering your power, reclaiming your voice, rewriting your story. And that story begins with a choice, to rise. To rise from the ashes, not as a victim, but as a creator. To use your scars as symbols of strength, your failures as fuel for wisdom, your darkness as depth. The rebirth ritual is not a moment, it's a process. A daily commitment to live aligned, to act with integrity, to speak with clarity. It's the embodiment of everything you've learned, everything you've faced, everything you've survived. And when you live from that place, you don't just change, you inspire change. You become a mirror for others, a guide, a light. Because your rebirth is not just for you, it's for everyone you touch. So honor the collapse. Embrace the chaos. Trust the fire. And rise. You are not who you were, and that's the point. The pain, the resistance, the collapse, they weren't punishments, they were invitations. Invitations to evolve, to awaken, to become. The new self is not perfect, it's present. It's not fearless, it's courageous. It's not finished, it's unfolding. You've shed layers of illusion, faced the shadow, rewired your mind, and walked through fire. And now you stand in clarity. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You see differently. You choose differently. You speak differently. The new self is built on truth, not comfort, not approval, not performance. It's grounded in values, guided by purpose, and fueled by integrity. You no longer chase validation, you embody worth. You no longer fear solitude, you honor it. You no longer resist pain, you use it. This is the power of transformation. It doesn't just change your habits, it changes your identity. You become someone who leads, who creates, who heals, who builds. Someone who doesn't just survive, but thrives. And thriving doesn't mean ease, it means alignment. It means living in sync with your highest self, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because the new self is forged in adversity. It's shaped by choices made in silence, in struggle, in solitude. And those choices define your legacy. Legacy is not what you leave behind, it's what you live now. Every word, every action, every moment is a reflection of who you've become. So live intentionally. Speak truthfully. Act boldly. The new self is not a destination, it's a direction. A daily decision to rise, to grow, to serve. And as you walk that path, you become a mirror for others. You show them what's possible. You remind them of their power. You awaken their mind. Because your transformation is not just personal, it's collective. The world needs awakened minds. Minds that think deeply, feel fully, and act wisely. And you are one of them. So honor your journey. Trust your evolution. And live as the new self, not someday but now. Growth is not the end, it's the beginning of service. The final stage of transformation is not mastery, but guidance. You've walked through fire, faced your shadow, rewired your mind, and rebuilt your identity. Now you return, not as who you were, but as who you've become. And your presence becomes medicine. Your story becomes a map. Your scars become symbols of hope. The hero's journey doesn't end with victory, it ends with contribution. You become the guide, the mirror, the catalyst for others. Not by preaching, but by embodying. By living with integrity, by speaking with clarity, by acting with compassion. The world is full of people still trapped in comfort, still afraid of pain, still resisting change. And your transformation shows them what's possible. You don't need a stage, you need authenticity. You don't need followers, you need alignment. When you live your truth, you give others permission to live theirs. That's the ripple effect of awakening. It spreads. It heals. It elevates. But you must stay vigilant. The old patterns will try to return. The comfort will whisper again. The resistance will resurface. That's why mastery is a practice, not a destination. You keep choosing growth. You keep choosing truth. You keep choosing purpose. And in that choice, you lead. You lead by example, by energy, by presence. You become the guide not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And realness is rare. Realness is revolutionary. So return to the world with open eyes, open heart, and open hands. Share what you've learned. Serve where you're needed. Stand where others fall. Because your journey wasn't just for you, it was for everyone you'll impact. You are the guide now, and the world is waiting.